All right, so first off, we're going to talk a little bit about the Dark Pictures Anthology Man of Medan, which is the new game from Supermassive, the people who brought us Until Dawn a few years ago. Uh, Until Dawn was a pretty cool game where you kind of acted out a teen horror slasher um, movie, sort of. There were a ton of different characters that you played, and you kind of made choices and explored this uh, scary cabin in the woods setting. It kind of threw in a whole bunch of different kinds of horror movie tropes. Like there was a scary monster, but there was also a murderer person. Like somebody was playing a practical joke and all this shit. And despite all of that, it kind of leaned into all of those kinds of tropes and characters, and yeah, and had a really interesting framework around the story. And this is kind of their follow up to that, very much in the same style. Um, and they're kind of framing this as like it's right in the title, an anthology series. Um, so this one's a little bit shorter than Until Dawn was. I think it's like a 3 to 4 hour experience. Until Dawn was actually pretty long for the type of game it was. And this is telling a story about a ghost ship that these kind of early 20s, everybody is perfectly fit and handsome and beautiful, and they are out on the water. They're like diving into these World War II ruins that are like underneath the water, and they end up finding this ship from World War II that has this weird like these weird ghost properties going on. Now they also incorporated some multiplayer into this game. Like you can do 2-player online co-op where each person plays a different character in different scenes sometimes. Then they also have local, I think it's either 4 or 5 local, where each person actually plays an entire different character throughout the whole thing. Now I played it about halfway through in the online co-op, and so far I'm enjoying it a little bit more than Until Dawn, mostly because I don't really care too much about like the teen horror slasher kind of angle, but this one is a little bit more psychological, a little bit more creepy. Like I don't know what's going to happen. They're doing mind tricks, like hallucinations and stuff like that, and it's kind of doing it for me a little bit more than Until Dawn did. But I don't think that's the consensus here. Leigh, what you played both of those games? What how do you think they compare? What do you think Medan does that's good? What are your issues with it?
Um, I didn't really like it, to be honest with you. What it does do better is set up kind of a lore and maybe kind of the potential for that lore to extend on, where um, Until Dawn felt quite self-contained.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they tried to spread that out, you saw that maybe I preferred Until Dawn, but when they did the extra stuff like the Impatient, all the extra stuff that you added on to the end of it to try and expand it, where
Mm-hmm.
people had questions in the first one, it's like, yeah, but why? It didn't really work because it didn't warrant it because it was a simple story. It was just
Mm-hmm.
a slasher story.
Yeah.
So it does do a good thing of suggesting there's a lore, almost like, I'm not saying it is Lovecraft, but like a Lovecraftian lore that it will spread, and then there will be kind of themes that will run through into different games and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. The characters aren't as interested in this for me, um,
Mm-hmm.
at all. Um, there's a real. I don't care about any of them at all. I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean
I'm
that's
not
kind of
sure I
how I
cared
felt
about.
about Until Dawn too.
Yeah, But whereas in Until Dawn, I didn't care about them, but I didn't necessarily want to see them die in horrible, gory ways. I don't really care if they die in this one. If I get as long as I get to the end, which I know I will in about 3 hours, that's fine. And there's something about kind of the obviously it's not supported by Sony now, so they're on their own budget, and you can see the budget straining a little bit. It doesn't look anywhere as good as a 4-year-old game. The previous game, which was 4 years now, I think. So there's all sorts of things. The animation isn't quite as good. The facial animations and stuff like that. The voice acting is a little spotty. I think that's safe to say. There's some. What's the name of the guy that introduced the narrator? We'll call him.
Yeah, the guy,
what his name is.
The psychologist or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what his name is in this game.
Yeah, but it's
like
great.
Curator or something.
Yeah, something like that. It's great. The guy that's in all the famous Hollywood movies is terrible. The Iceman guy. Oh, he's awful.
Shawn Ashmore.
Terrible. That's the one. He was better in Quantum Break, put it that way. Yeah. So the performances weren't very good. The story was good enough, but I felt like the pacing was really poor. Long stretches of not very interesting stuff happening. The game wasn't particularly effective.
For a game that's pretty short, it takes a while to get going. It's like a very slow burn at the beginning, and then it kind of just kicks it into overdrive a little bit at a certain point. I don't want to spoil anything about the story, but so what's interesting is like I would never be able to get through any of these games single player just by myself. I think they're just the act of playing them. It's the same reason I don't really go for like the Telltale games and stuff like that. I just I like stories in games, and I like when they're tied in with, their presentation and their gameplay and stuff. But these are like just pure story experiences almost. Like the gameplay is like so, like I mean, walking around in this game is awful. The camera angles are terrible. It's incredibly awkward. And really all you're doing is walking around and waiting to trigger the next cutscene or pick up an object or something like that. So to me that's extremely uninteresting. But playing it multiplayer, because you get the two different perspectives, you can choose basically how you want to play the game, whether you want to play the game actual co-op, like talking about what the other person talking about what they're seeing, you talking about what they're seeing, and kind of piecing together the whole scene, or you can choose to not and see how the game unfolds that way, because the game's all about like, you're making choices, and if you make the wrong choice, these people live or die. And so we played it specifically, like constantly talking back and forth about what we're seeing and stuff like that. And that, it was a choice. We made a choice, and that's the way we decided to do it. And, doing it the other way is completely valid. And I don't know, I'm not here to say which way is the right way or the wrong way, but I can see it being a very different experience. I'm not even sure how it would unfold if you were doing it single player. Does it? So there are points where the party breaks up, and in multiplayer, one person's controlling one group of people and the other person's with the other group of people. Do you play both of those in single player? Both of those parts?
Yeah, it has you go through both.
Okay. So I could see
you'll
this.
do one set, and then it switches over, so...
Okay. Because in that case, I could see this being a much longer game, single player.
Yeah, it probably hits up at about 5 hours, 5.5 hours.
Yeah, I think I was around like 5.5, 6 hours for it.
Okay, yeah, because
But
I don't know. I don't actually know how far in we are. But we played for like 2.5 hours, and like I said, I don't know how much more we have to go. So I guess you can have such wildly different experiences playing this game, depending on how you play it. And then if you're playing in the party, like the local stuff, you do get to see everything anyway. And I don't know, I guess you're just sitting there watching it if you're not playing. It's like a pass the controller kind of thing. And I don't know what experience that would be as well. Because there's a point, and there's probably several points in this game where if I didn't know, if the other person wasn't explaining what was happening, what their point of view was, I would have made different choices, and I would have, had different outcomes and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's. I think the multiplayer out of everything is probably the more interesting aspect that they're going for. It's just, it's obviously not going to be the way that everybody experiences it.
no.
And yeah,
But it's made for everyone to experience it, though, isn't it? It's made for that because it caters to every audience. It caters to the single player who want the spooky experience. It plays to the online co-op people, but it also plays to the let's have a party and play people. So they're kind of going for every audience they can for this sort of game.
Yeah, they're trying to.
Yeah.
I guess that
If they like
whether it pulls off, and there's that discussion, and then there's discussion about whether or not this is just a weak story overall, and maybe the next one everything's the same, but it's a different story, and it does a better job of executing. 'Cause like I said, the even in the co-op, the beginning of this is very slow, and yeah, I agree with you, Leigh, that the characters, it's hard. There's nothing there for you to latch onto. There isn't a whole lot of character development. You kind of get, when they get introduced, you get told their character traits, and that's kind of all of the backstory you get on these people, with the exception of Conrad being a fucking asshole. That's about all you get in terms of character development.
Yeah.
And Derrick, I know you played through it single player. What were your takeaways? Anything that you want to bring up? I know you didn't play Until Dawn.
You guys were... Yeah, I didn't play Until Dawn, so I don't have really something solid to compare it to as far as mechanics and how it unfolds. But for me, like I said, there was no attachments to the characters because they really didn't change that much, even though you'd be making these decisions, and you get some minor trait updates, but they wouldn't update as much or as significantly as you think it would to keep you attached to them. So for playing through solo, it was just kind of all right, walk here. Now we're gonna walk here. Look around here for a clue. Okay, jump scare. All right, walk around some more. Yeah. And all the areas looked the same. A lot of it was the same areas too. Also, like you previously mentioned too, the whole psyche part of it would be more interesting. And to me, I haven't got to try the multiplayer part, but when I do it, like we were talking about in chat some, is I want to try it where we don't talk about it, where I have my character, the other person has theirs, and we play through to see how it unfolds without knowing what's happening. Because that's kind of part of that I've taken away from the game is it'll show you the scene, and at the end it shows you kind of how everything had unfolded, whereas something happens, you'll kind of see how that affects. That would be more interesting to me than how it is just playing it solo, where you're seeing everything, so you know how if you're trying to get a certain trophy or a certain thing done, playing solo you can do that, or talking about it you can do that, because you're kind of pairing all these choices together. To where if you're just playing one person and the other person's playing the other, and you're creating the story where you're solely that character, it might change the way it is. For the way you see it at the end as a story, because like I said, it's coming off from solo. It really wasn't like, wow, or okay, I want to come back to this. Like, I want to start up, I want to run through a whole nother story, but playing it solo, I just can't bring myself to like want to
Yeah.
sit through it again.
Yeah, it sounds like you wouldn't get anything out of a second playthrough except for, like you said, trophies if you played it a little bit differently. And like, so the way that the co-op works is you keep switching off between characters. You don't actually stick with the same characters throughout the whole thing. Conrad, for instance, who's the Sean Ashmore character. When we first started, I played as him, but then the other person played as him for a certain part as well. So you don't even really get connected to the characters. You don't even really feel like I'm in control. I'm in charge of Conrad. So every choice I make affects him. Sometimes the other player has choices too. I think it's mostly you'll play the same characters, but there are points where it swaps off, and I don't know what the thinking behind that is, if there's any logic to it or not. I just know that it did swap off.
Okay, see. That would kind of change my feel on it then for multiplayer. Like, if you got to like select, all right, you want like we know these different scenes happen, different characters go off away. So if you had A and C character, the other person had B and D, and then
yeah, it's not as clear cut as that.
Right.
Unfortunately, that would actually made a lot more sense. But no, there are times where you get control. I think everybody will control every character at some point, I think.
I think the biggest problem with it is, over all of those things, is that it isn't scary at all. It's not really effective at all.
Yeah,
Whereas
there's a couple of points where it gets a little scary, but I don't think it was going for like that kind of terror. I think it was going, like we were saying, more for the psychological, what is going on here? Is what I'm seeing real, or the boat is basically like, it's like Event Horizon on the water. It's kind of like the what we're talking about here. And yeah, I mean, if that's what there's probably more in Until Dawn, but Until Dawn was also a lot longer. Like I said, it had a lot more avenues. Like, it wasn't just doing the ghost ship thing, right? It was doing the weird monster thing. It was doing the cabin in the wood. Well, not cabin in the wood, but what?
Friday the 13th.
What's that?
Friday the 13th.
Not. I don't know if it was Friday the 13th. It was more like I was going more toward like the angle where the one guy there was like purposely trying to scare them, right? Like he was setting it all up, but then there ended up being this actual real monster. So it was doing a little bit more than just a one single thing, like the like Medan is trying just the ghost ship. So I don't know. But I'm very much in terms of horror games, I'm very put off by them anyway. I don't I'm more interested in the psychological stuff anyway than the oh, this is actually scary, or jump scares and stuff like that. Yeah, I guess we'll see what the next one is. As far as I can tell, that it's a little bit more traditional. From what I understand, I guess it's going to be a little bit more of a slasher. Yeah, we'll see how long it takes them to get it out, and hopefully they do. Hopefully they manage this shorter experience with also having a little bit more character development, so you care about the people that you're trying to either save or kill.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this very special episode of Voxel Viewpoint. If you'd like to hear or see more, please consider subscribing to us on your favorite podcast app, subscribing to us on YouTube, or visiting voxelvoice.com, where all of our great content comes together in one place. Also check out the Voxel Voice Facebook group, where you can join in on the discussion with a great, like-minded community.